Welcome to Dos Amigos.
Welcome to Dos Amigos, two amigos. Here we go.
Freddy, salud.
Wilmer, salud.
What are you sipping on there?
A little cafecito.
Cafecicho.
Cafecito.
You know today felt like a cafecicho day. I started my day super early today.
Yeah. What was your call time today?
So today I didn't have to be on set, but I started. I did a workout in the morning. Then I had a couple of little things that I had to do, and then I had a bunch of meetings.
Okay.
A meeting for some top brass help for the company as we're expanding some other ways.
Right.
So I had meetings like back to back to back all day today, and it just ended. As you can tell, my voice is a little raspy.
It just ended now.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
It just kept going today.
Yeah.
So it was a really long day, but it was nice. But what was your day like? What'd you do today?
Good. Same. Some exercise. Some stuff at the house.
You worked on them glutes.
Did you work on the glutes? No. Today's Monday, right? It's like the
Chest day.
The chest. The upper.
Yeah, chest day. Yeah.
What time does your workout start in the morning?
It depends on the call time. Like if I have a 7 a.m. call time, I try to get in there at 4:30 a.m.
Wow, 4:30.
And that's like more often than none.
Yeah.
So I more 4:30 in the morning, I get it done. If I have a late call, I work out like 8, 9. I try to sleep in a little bit, spend a little time with Keanu, maybe take her to school if I can.
Yeah.
And then it worked out. Or if you're like, oh man, heavy lift for today, I wake up at 7. I wake up at 5:30, do a little cardio, be on the road by 6:30, be on set by 7, and then do my lift in the evening, like whenever I get home.
Oh, so you split it up.
Yeah.
If you're working out at 4 in the morning, do you eat before you work out?
No, I work out on an empty stomach.
On an empty stomach,
Yeah.
really?
I'm pretty good about it. Some people really need the carbs to kind of get the energy, and sometimes, by the way, I highly recommend people to have a meal, something. If you're lifting, if you're not trying to, lose fat and you're not trying to do that, then like. Definitely, eat something.
Not even coffee, nothing, pre-workout.
No, I've been doing a little pre-workout. I've been dabbling in some of that pre-workout stuff.
Yeah.
Especially at 4:30 in the morning when you're like you've just went to sleep at 10:30, 11 because you read scripts and you're noting stuff. Yeah, you got to do that.
Yeah.
But I do a little bit of that, and then I get it in. And then I just by 3 p.m. though, a 4:30 workout also means that by 3:30 p.m. your eyes are screaming. They're like, please close them. Please close your eyes right now.
Yeah.
Does that
mean another cup of coffee?
That means a little cafecito. A little cafecito, yeah.
Yeah.
That means you got to put it in gear a little bit, But you work out in the morning too? You get it out of the way or you do it like whenever you can?
Yeah, a little later in the afternoon, The morning is like coffee, meditation, prayer, stuff like that. I try to get that in first and then...
And you do prayer at home or you do go somewhere?
Yeah.
Do you go to church in the weekends?
Yeah, here and there.
Where? Well, I guess we'll talk about where later.
Yeah.
Because I've been looking for church. Well, it leads us perfectly into our theme of this episode. We in the last couple of episodes we took a little time to understand one another in levels that we hadn't before.
Yeah.
Kind of go back to who our families really were before we were any possibility.
Yeah.
We went right into how we became not just a possibility, but then the upbringing, the environment in which we grew up.
Yeah.
The sacrifices some of our parents had to make for us to kind of have a notion that we can do a little bit or go a little farther than they did. And now we enter like a realm of like, how do we get here? Right? How do we get here as actors? How do we get here as entertainers? Individuals who when you do all the odds and you do the math, we had no business making it this far.
You got that right.
Right. So I guess the big question is like, what was that first job that you're like, I got one?
I got a funny story before. Let me just explain. When I was like 14, 15 years old. In Chicago, they used to make these things called industrial films, right? So the National Heart Association was doing an industrial film, I guess, so they could watch it internally in the company. And I landed it, and I was going to make $700.
Bro.
And I was like, yo, 14, 15, $700. I was like, wow, I was already planning what I was going to do with the money. And it was my first time on set. And it wasn't SAG because I was there almost like 24 hours. So it was mad illegal. You know, I was a minor and I should not have been there that long. But I felt like a working actor, man. I was in front of the camera. I was acting scenes. And I was so excited to not only see it, but to get that $700. Right?
I mean, that's crazy.
So I waited a week, right? The $700 is not there. I waited 2 weeks. I waited 3 weeks. And I was like, man, the money hasn't arrived yet. I said, I should go to the agency to see where my money is, right? And I remember going to that agency and taking the elevator up. And as the elevator approached the floor that the agency was at, the agency was empty.
No.
Bro, the chairs were on the desk.
That's like a boiler room moment. It's like literally boiler room moment.
Yeah, man. They made out with my $700, and I was like, wow. I like swore off agents. I'll never have an agent again, man. I'm gonna like stick to theater in Chicago, and like But about a year later, I got an agent, and the rest is history. So that's my first foray.
And that was your Chicago.
That was my first Chicago agent, and then that's when I signed with the big agency there called Suzanne's A Plus. Yeah.
So I was going to this night class on Wednesday nights. I had gone to this. Well, when I was a little kid. We drive down and there was a commercial online and it said like, are you between the ages of blah, 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 blah.
Right.
You think you got what it takes to do national commercials and Saturday morning shows, then come and show up to the LAX Hilton and, you're going to have some, a panel of experts are going to deem to see if you got what it takes.
Yeah.
And so I convinced my dad, I was like, hey dad, I heard that if I do a little commercial here and there, I make a little money and bring it to the house. My dad's like, okay, mijo, let's see what's up. So we went over to, the Hilton in LAX, and it was like a cattle, bro. It was like, That's how they got people. They threw the fish net out on this radio station.
Yeah.
People would show up, and their kids, walk over there, and they walk on this plank. They get to the end of the runway.
Yeah.
They look into camera, and they say their name, their age, and where they're from. And they turn around. And then that's what the expert needed to see. To deem you,
whether you're a star,
the X, you had that X factor,
right. And it's the way you said your name.
Yes, for sure. Now, mind you, I had just learned how to speak English. Okay, so I get on stage and I walk down that plank and I get to the front of it, and I say, "Hello, my name is Wilmer Valderrama. I'm 16 years old and I'm from Venezuela, Colombia. I'm Venezuelan, Colombia." And I turn around and I walk away.
But did you feel like you had to say it in a way that was like,
no,
I'm gonna stand out. I'm gonna like.
No, I thought like, oh, okay, they're just slating. I just said that, and somehow, surprise, surprise, I had what it took.
Yeah, you had it, buddy.
Yeah, I had it. But in everyone's defense, everyone had what it took. So
right.
Everyone got pushed to the front of the desk, and then they ask you, hey, here's how it works. You're going to pay this many sessions. And, it was basically one of those things where they just get your money.
Yeah.
You pay for commercial slate classes,
right.
Drama classes, comedy classes, audition classes. And there was this thing called Beverly Hills Studios.
Beverly Hills Studios.
I don't even think it was
the perfect name.
Yes,
too.
yes.
Beverly Hills, pretty prestigious.
Pretty prestigious, and
yes.
and I don't even think it was in Beverly Hills. So my dad is like, looked at the money. He's like, oh, this is.
Do you remember how much it was?
Yeah, it was something like $600 for 10 classes of commercial, and then another $300 for scene work and call read.
Yeah.
So it's just $1,100.
Damn. And that's a lot.
Bro,
man.
Are you kidding? We weren't making that in 3 months. But
right.
my dad found a way, and borrowed some money, and he just put me in there, and I went to the school. And I'm only telling you this part of it because, then this teacher named Celeste Boyd started teaching me for free at her house on Wednesday nights.
Who was originally a part of that program?
Part of that teacher. And she's like, hey, I'd like to teach you on Wednesday nights. So I was like, oh, that's cool. So I went and started, taking classes, and there was like 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds, and I was 16, and I was doing scenes with so many different ages, and it was like really good practice.
Wow.
And she introduced me to this agent. Very similar situation, you know.
Right.
And this agent had this other, small size agency, and he says, I'm not going to represent you, but I'm going to take you out of some auditions and see what happens.
Yeah.
And I went out on one Doritos commercial. Did not get it. The feedback was like, hey, pretty funny kid, but he has an accent.
Oh, wow.
So that's why he couldn't get the part. They wanted a Latin person, but he couldn't sound. He couldn't sound Latin.
Right.
So I didn't get the part. And but then he's like, well, let me see. I want to send you something else. And then so my first thing was, I know this audition. I don't know how, but I get booked to this regional commercial for a Smart Yellow Pages commercial.
Yellow Pages?
A Yellow Pages commercial.
Yeah.
And it was for California only. And what's funny is it was in Spanish. It was for the Spanish market, for the Spanish-speaking market. And I go in and I grab the Yellow Pages and I look right to camera and I say, the Pacific Bell Smart Yellow Pages, but with a really straight accent. The accent was crazy.
In English, though.
In English.
But
my part was in English.
Yeah,
but the whole commercial was in Spanish, you know. And, I had my fake mom, I had my fake sister, and the whole thing. I was like, oh, my God, I'm doing it. But my whole part was just like...
Yeah.
And that was my first commercial. And so with that money, I grabbed that money.
What'd you make? How much did you make?
I think it was $1,600.
$1,600?
No.
Oh.
Yes, it was $1,600.
Yeah.
Because it was a complete buyout thing or whatever and all that.
Yeah.
And so with that money, it was $1,200. So with that money, I paid my Screen Actors Guild member thing, and I could apply now. And
Taft-Hartley, did they have
Taft-Hartley?
Yeah.
And then I paid my dues, and I became a SAG member. Of course, that membership was we had to pay a lot of money at the beginning, and
right.
And so I became a SAG actor after that. What was so obviously it's a journey, right? As soon as you start, you taste blood for a second, you're like, oh, I can do this, you know, and you start auditioning. How long did it take until you got that one gig where you were like, oh, I do this?
Oh, wow. So after that movie I was telling you about, I was doing pretty okay in Chicago. I was pounding the pavement. I think we covered this in the other episode. Did episode of the television that was coming through Chicago at that time. This John Wells thing, this other thing. Did a couple of commercials, but it wasn't until I did a film called The Walk in the Clouds that was really my first movie that turned where I got to turn pro, And so sometimes I describe it to people like, I was kind of like LeBron or like Kobe, I just kind of went pro right after high school because I never got a chance to go to college. Yeah. So that happened. High school was over. I was doing pretty good in high school. I was booking stuff in Chicago, and everyone in my family, pretty much all my brothers and cousins, all went to college after. So obviously the pressure was on for me to go to college. And I wanted to act, so I my dad was on me, people were on me, and I was like, look, just give me a year, okay? Give me a year, let me pound the pavement, let me see what I can do within this year. And that year was an incredibly dry year. And nothing was happening. I had to take this third shift job at this legal copy place, working from midnight to 8 a.m. And nothing was happening. And then eventually I was like, okay, I guess it's time for me to sort of wrap it up and go back to school and try to figure something out. And then I landed an Illinois lottery commercial. And I was like, oh, okay, the tide is changing. Things are picking back up. And then I landed this movie called The Fence with this guy, Billy Worth, who was in The Lost Boys. And I played him when he would have flashbacks in the movie. And I was like, I landed an indie film. Awesome. All right, this is starting to work. And then Merchant of Venice came through Chicago at that time. Now, I may be wrong, and John Ortiz may be able to correct me on this. But I believe it was a Labyrinth Theater production, and I believe it was John Ortiz and Philip Seymour Hoffman came through Chicago at the Goodman Theater. and they were very interested in me being in the play because I was a local. Now, for those who don't know the Goodman Theater in Chicago, the Goodman and the Steppenwolf and those theaters are like Broadway to us, right? And so I was always too young to do those theaters, and I was finally at the age to get to do those theaters. So I was super psyched that they wanted me to be a part of it. Then I got an audition for this 20th Century Fox movie, A Walk in the Clouds. And it was Keanu Reeves, and it was Anthony Quinn, and it was Keanu's follow-up movie to Speed.
Oh, my God.
And so they were putting me on tape in Chicago, and I thought, well, you know, man, I'm in Chicago. Like, you know, I didn't even think anything of it. I went in, I auditioned once, I auditioned twice. Like 3 times I auditioned in Chicago. Finally, I get a call that they were going to fly me out to screen test at 20th Century Fox in L.A. out of Chicago.
Had you been in LA before?
Never.
Dude, come on.
I had never really even been out of Chicago.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden...
You're flying to the West Coast.
I'm like this 19-year-old kid. I'm staying at this crazy expensive hotel over on Avenue of the Stars in Century City. You know, the Fox lot is over like on Pico. And they bring me on the Fox lot, and it was the most magnificent thing I
It's
had
a magnetic thing when you're walking in. Anybody who comes to
LA,
LA when they drive to the 20th Century lot,
yeah,
you enter those gates, and as soon as you're received by these massive sound stages, and you just know something went on in here, you know, that you probably grew up with. I mean, it's just legendary.
Dude, you just feel the history when you walk in, you know. And I was so taken by it all. And I remember going in to audition, and I was like the only guy auditioning. And I would have like the wardrobe person coming up to me and like, hey, all right, let me take your measurements. And, you know, it was like I almost had it, but I had to go in and still like do the screen test. And it turns out that it was just sort of like a formality. You know, I went in there, I screen tested. They're like, all right, thank you. They're like, go in the next room and go get your makeup done and like figure it out. And that day they told me I got it, you know.
Dude, what went through your mind?
You were
by yourself?
I was by myself. No, I was still technically...
No cell phone to call anyone yet?
No cell phone. I was still technically living at my parents' house, you know. I was like a snotty-nosed theater kid from Chicago. All of a sudden, I landed this gigantic movie. It was so overwhelming. I didn't know how to process it. You know, I just went back home and got ready, and then shipped off for 3 months by myself to go shoot this movie with Keanu Reeves and Anthony Quinn. And it was Alfonso Arao's follow-up movie to like Water for Chocolate.
Yes, dude. That movie's incredible.
Yeah, at that time, like Water for Chocolate was the highest
beautiful
grossing.
Movies too.
Oh my God, it was the highest grossing foreign film of that time.
Yeah.
And this was his follow-up movie to it. Giancarlo Giannini played my dad, which is a legendary Italian actor. Angelica Aragon, all of these wonderful actresses from Mexico City. And then the crew was all from Mexico City, right? So Emmanuel Lubezki, 5-time Oscar-winning DP, this was his first American movie.
Wow.
El Chivo, as we call him. Shout out to El Chivo.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
that guy, he's the man.
Oh, he's the
He's
best,
like a
man.
legendary guy. I mean, it's like impossible to have a meeting with him right now, you know?
Oh, dude. After those 5 Oscars he has sitting on his desk.
Yeah.
And so I remember Alfonso Arau going like, you see that guy? That's El Chivo, man. We call him the Boy Wonder. He must have only been a few years older than me, man. He looked so young, you know. And the B camera operator on that movie was Rodrigo Garcia, who is a wonderful film and television director. He eventually became one of 6 Feet Under's most prominent directors. He was the showrunner on In Treatment on HBO.
Wow.
But he was the B camera operator. And they were all like kids. They were all just so happy to be there.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I had gotten like the taste of what the film community must have been like in Mexico City. Mm-hmm. Even when we were filming the movie, I remember one time Alfonso says, hey, I want you to meet somebody, man. He just directed this movie called, I think it was called Little Women, and it was Alfonso Cuarón. And he had come from Mexico City to come and hang out with all his guys, you know, on the set, you know. So I didn't really understand what I was experiencing at that time, you know. I was just a kid. I was 19. I was just happy to be there. And I was there with like a ton of legends and didn't even know.
I mean, it goes to tell you how long they've been doing it too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You think about how long they've been on that same grind.
Yeah.
So you get the part and you're like, Like what now? Like, and so when do you have to shoot after that you got the part?
Oh, like immediately. It was like a week or two later. They were like, get on the plane.
So you didn't even go
coming,
back to Chicago? Did you go back?
Yeah, I went back to Chicago.
Pick up a bag,
and,
pack a bag for the month or whatever.
Yeah, but I had to make like this crucial decision, because like they wanted me in Merchant of Venice. So I was giving up this dream to do a play at the Goodman Theater. So I had to choose between school, because my dad was like, you got to go to school.
Right.
Merchant of Venice, to give up a dream to do that, or to go pro and to take the movie. And so I took the movie.
And that's what he wrote.
Best decision I ever made, I think.
What was that first day on set like? You rolled up to a real movie set, and you're seeing all these actors you've seen before, and the camera's there, and you've been doing your lines the night before, and then you walk in, and what?
I just remember feeling relaxed, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Must be nice.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe because, I was like a cocky, like, Chicago kid,
They
like
cast me, I probably got it.
Yeah, but it was more like, I know what I'm going on there to, like, do what I do, And I was super relaxed, and Alfonso was awesome, and everybody was so cool, I think maybe that was why I felt so relaxed, because Keanu Reeves, first of all, like everything that you hear about him is absolutely true, man. I mean, he's probably one of the nicest guys I've ever worked with in my life. I mean, to this day, every time I see him, it's like we're right back to that time. And it was, this was right after Speed, man. He was the biggest superstar in the
biggest
world.
heartthrob, too.
Huge, man. But the nicest guy, and just understood. And we were like the two youngest guys on set, I think he was like 30 and I was like 19. Everybody else was older than us, So I think that we related on that level. But he made me feel so welcomed and was so incredibly nice to me. And so was Alfonso and Giancarlo and everybody. It just became like this instant family right away, which lent itself to the
energy on that screen too. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and then to get to work with Anthony Quinn, right? Which was I didn't appreciate it at the time. Like I almost wish I was older, because Anthony, I was excited to work with the guy from Speed, right?
Right.
Where Anthony was a legend, obviously, but he was more like our dad's generation, right? Like I was still a kid, and I didn't appreciate it.
That's a privilege. I mean, I had a run-in with Anthony Quinn when I was 19 years old myself.
Did you? Yeah.
I didn't work with him, but we were at the Hispanic Heritage Awards in Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center. And that's a really crazy story, a really funny story.
I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Do we save it for another episode?
Yeah,
Can we hear it now?
For another episode.
All right.
That's a very good one.
Yeah.
Well, it makes me reflect on, that feeling. You kind of took me back to that wondrous feeling where you're like, had the audacity of thinking that, like, I got this.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for you to say action.
Yeah.
The world where you have this confidence, this level of confidence that is so unaware of not just the environment, but the people that are in that environment that have earned it longer than you. And you kind of almost have to have that.
Yeah.
Right? Like you kind of almost have to not do the math and just do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I remember my biggest break came, at a moment where in my life where I felt serendipitously we needed it the most, right?
Yeah.
Like I think, talked in the last episode where my dad's Mazda was stolen.
Mm-hmm.
I made my dad this promise that like I was going to be this actor, I was going to make this money, and I was going to have restaurants and have all these things, and that we're never going to have to pay rent again.
Yeah.
And, we're not going to have to worry about that stuff. And, and my dad said, okay, mijo, you can do that. I feel like he gave me permission to do it. And I was like, great. Now I know I can go ahead full throttle with this thing.
Right.
My dad was probably being like, okay, mijo, do what you want to do. It's okay. I don't think he understood the magnitude of what he had unlocked in me. And I was doing like...
his belief in you.
Yes. For me, I looked at it as like, he saw me. He said, I told him I was going to do it. He believes I can do it. And he told me, go ahead and do it. And that's how I took it. And, I was doing a lot of theater in high school, because, that was like my obsession in learning how to speak English was to getting on stage and like doing stage over and over again. And then, this agent told me, told me, all right, we're going to send you in this pilot. I'm like, what is a pilot? I'm going to play a pilot? I'm like, no, a pilot is the first episode.
Was that the first pilot you ever auditioned for? The first pilot you ever auditioned for?
First pilot I've ever
Get out of
auditioned
here,
for.
man.
Yeah.
Wow. That's some good stuff, Wilmer. But we have to take a pause and maybe keep talking on the next episode.
I hope you enjoyed part 1.
Hope to see you guys in part 2.